read the title.
Senate 1838, an act to amend the Hong Kong Policy Act of 1992 and for other purposes.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? Members will record their votes by electronic device. Members, this is a 5-minute vote. 5-minute vote.
Yesterday, the Senate passed a bill by voice vote that supports the ongoing Hong Kong protests against China. And now the House votes on the measure relating to democracy and human rights in Hong Kong. Another vote that prohibits the export of munitions to the Hong Kong police force follows this one. The House has one legislative day left before the Thanksgiving recess, and members gavel in tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern to complete work on a measure that aims to curb workplace violence for health care and social service workers. The House Intelligence Committee continues its impeachment inquiry hearings today. Earlier, the committee heard testimony from Gordon Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the European Union. And after these House votes are over, another hearing begins with Deputy Assistant Defense Secretary Laura Cooper and State Department Undersecretary David Hale. You can watch live coverage on C-SPAN 3. You can also watch online at cspan.org or listen on the free C-SPAN radio app.
On this vote, the yeas are 417, the nays are 1. 2/3 being the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman of California, Mr. Sherman, to suspend the rules and pass Senate Bill 2710, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title.
Senate 2710, an act to prohibit the commercial export of covered munitions items to the Hong Kong police force.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? Members will record their votes by electronic device. Members, this is a 5-minute vote. 5-minute vote.
This is the final vote in the House today on a bill that prohibits that export of munitions to the Hong Kong police force. The chamber just passed another measure related to Hong Kong, supporting the recent protests against China relating to democracy and human rights. Tomorrow, government funding expires. Yesterday, the House passed a measure that funds the government through December 20th. The Senate will need to also pass that legislation, and President Trump will need to sign it in order to avoid a government shutdown. Follow the Senate live on C-SPAN 2. New York Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney is the new chair of the Oversight and Reform Committee. She won a secret ballot earlier today by a vote of 133 to 86 over Virginia Representative Jerry Connolly. Congresswoman Maloney now succeeds Elijah Cummings, who died last month. The main news in Washington today is the impeachment inquiry hearings being held by the House Intelligence Committee. This morning we heard testimony from Gordon Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the European Union. And when these House votes are over, the committee will then hear from Deputy Assistant Defense Secretary Laura Cooper and State Department Undersecretary David Hale. You can watch live coverage on C-SPAN 3. You can also watch online at cspan.org or listen on the free C-SPAN radio app.
Have all members voted? Does any member wish to change their votes? On this vote, the yeas are 417, the nays are 0. Two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The chair announces the Speaker's appointment pursuant to 22 U.S.C. 276D in the order of the House of January 3rd, 2019 of the following member on the part of the House to the Canada-United States Interparliamentary Group.
Mr. Huizinga of Michigan.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection. Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today, along with my colleagues, Susan Davis, Scott Peters, Mike Levin, and Chairwoman Maxine Waters, to honor Ms. Fahari Jeffers, who passed away on October 30th, for her outstanding actions as a tireless civil rights and labor leader and motivator, and as the co-founder of the United Domestic Workers of America. In 1977, Fahari Jeffers and her husband, Ken M. Samaji, formed the United Domestic Workers Organizing Committee under the mentorship of Cesar Chavez. It was the first known labor organization for domestic workers in the United States of America, and only the third labor union in the U.S. labor history to be founded by Latinos or African Americans. Additionally, Mrs. Jeffers served as United Domestic Workers Secretary-Treasurer for the first General Counsel until 2005. Ms. Jeffers worked tirelessly as lead negotiator for all union contracts throughout the state of California, pursuing life improvements that helped millions of Americans in the state and nationwide. Her model collective bargaining rights law of 1999 is patterned across California and the nation, where over 2 million home care workers enjoy union rights. Fahari regarded writing this legislation as one of her proudest accomplishments. Asserting rights for our nation's domestic workers gave way to the passage of the first ever Federal Domestic Workers Bill of Rights in 2013. Ms. Jeffers used her skills and experience to represent and defend the rights of one of the most underrepresented and underpaid working groups in our society, our home care workers who clean, cook, and provide personal care assistance to the sick and disabled. In 2018, Fahari was inducted into the San Diego County Women's Hall of Fame. At home in National City, the devoutly Catholic couple adopted 16 children over the years. Survivors include her husband of 44 years, Ken M. Samaji, her siblings Rose Glassford of Bermuda, Karama Broach of North Carolina, Joe Jeffers of Colorado, Vicki Jeffers of North Carolina, and Dr. Adam Jeffers of the United Arab Emirates, and her adopted children. We would like to honor Fahari Jeffers for her dedication and lifelong commitment to civil rights, the labor movement, and the community. I ask that members and guests in the gallery rise for a moment of silence. I yield back. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Warren.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Minnesota seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to take from the Speaker's table S.1838 and ask for its immediate consideration in the House.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Senate 862, an act to extend the sunset for collateral requirements for small business administration disaster loans.
Is there an objection to the consideration of the bill? Without objection, the bill is read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Without objection. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize November as National Entrepreneur Month. America has always been known as a land of innovation, and entrepreneurs combine innovation with capitalism. But there is a group of future business leaders that needs our help, the minority entrepreneurs. Many do not get the funds they need based on bias in the banking and loan industry. Too many bank managers still refuse to see minorities as worthy of loans. When they do get them, minorities are charged higher interest rates on average than whites. Many do not even fill out the loan applications because they know they will be rejected. Major banks have programs to deal with it, but clearly more needs to be done. We need to make sure loans are distributed based on credentials of the applicant, not the color of his or her skin. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition?
I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks. Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, November is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. I rise to recognize the millions of Americans across this great country who are living with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. Alzheimer's is a frightening disease that has impacted several individuals close to me. My Aunt Jane lost her battle with the disease while my Aunt Virginia continues to fight it. Additionally, the legendary Pat Summitt, a friend of mine, she actually came to my father's funeral, who coached the University of Tennessee Lady Vols basketball team for 38 seasons, lived with and brought awareness to Alzheimer's disease before passing away in 2016. I'm especially thankful for the caregivers who assist those living with a memory disorder. Friends, family members, and trained professionals care for these patients and make sacrifices to ensure their comfort. These efforts must not be overlooked, Mr. Speaker. Individuals diagnosed with Alzheimer's need to know they are not alone in their battle against this difficult illness. And while I remain optimistic about new treatments and ongoing research to find a cure, this November, I encourage my constituents and colleagues to take a moment to think about those Americans living with Alzheimer's disease and say a prayer for them and their family, and to show support for the caregivers who look after and advocate for them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Florida seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, Today, we recognize Latina Equal Pay Day, and I want to start by emphasizing that the gender pay gap is real, and it hurts Latina women and families. We know that Latinas make only 54 cents for every dollar that a white, non-Hispanic male makes for doing the same job. Let that sink in for just one moment. In 2019, Latina women get paid 54 cents for every dollar a non-Hispanic man makes for the same work. In fact, a Latina must work an additional 35 years to catch up to the earnings of a 60-year-old man, averaging to about $1.1 million in loss of earnings during a 40-year career. Continuing to ignore this disparity has repercussions in many aspects of our economy, and it leaves over 40% of families that are headed by a Latina in poverty. We must find a way to close the wage for the sake of our mothers, our sisters, our daughters, and our families. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize Scott Sewell for his 4 years of service as president of the Winston-Salem Police Foundation. When he steps down as president in December, Mr. Sewell will be able to look back on his term and be extremely proud of the successes he has had. Mr. Sewell has led the foundation in a manner that truly gives back to the community. One such example is when, under his leadership, the foundation donated to the Winston-Salem Police Department the Operation Sweet Reeds truck, which will be used to engage with local children with ice cream and promote literacy and education. Scott Sewell has served his community well, and he will continue to do so even after his term is ended. He is an exemplary member